rock it.
Okay, awesome. I'm just going to continue because I don't think there was much to show anyway with the slides. So yeah, that's our new reality where, with the ever evolving threat landscape and hybrid work culture, our traditional security models are no longer sufficient. There's also an increase in diversity of endpoints. The digital estate continues to grow, making visibility and threat detection and response across multiple platforms and clouds challenging. And bad actors know this, and they are exploiting these vulnerabilities. The diversity and siloed solutions that we have, they make rolling out new security controls difficult and inconsistent. And so modern endpoint security strategies and zero trust adoption is accelerating as enterprises have recognized the imperative to verify and secure every identity, validate device health, enforce least privilege, and capture and analyze telemetry to better understand and secure the digital estate. The speed, scale, and sophistication of cyber attacks continues to grow exponentially. So as threat continues to grow, so should we continue to adopt and enhance our security strategies. And what's the number one challenge you think that every enterprise constantly works to solve? It's enterprise security, right? And more specifically, securing data where it's most at risk. That is on the endpoint. Data shows that over 90% of security breaches originate at the endpoint. We need to secure flexible work without slowing down productivity and without compromising security. But how do we achieve this? The answer lies in modern endpoint security and embracing a zero trust approach. So let's zoom in. What do I mean by modern endpoint security? Right, let's understand that. Now, security is no longer about placing your endpoints behind the corporate firewall and assuming everything behind the firewall is safe. We need to cater to users accessing corporate resources from anywhere, from outside the network and on any device, be it device platform or ownership type, there could be a variety. Security is no longer about locking down machines. It's about enabling productivity while containing risk. Modern endpoint security focuses on risk-based, adaptive controls instead of those rigid restrictions of locking down machines. And security is no longer about just loading up antivirus and being done. Modern endpoint security is identity aware, risk adaptive, cloud native, policy driven, context driven. It's a lot of things. It's about having proper visibility into transactions, using real-time compliance and data, threat intelligence, and automated remediation to secure endpoints. Modern security is no longer about static trust or trust once and verify never, but is about continuous verification and dynamic trust, like compliance checks and access being granted conditionally. So in a sense, modern endpoint security is all about continuous posture management. Those are the keywords. You continuously monitor and you continuously enforce access decisions. Modern security is about devices fixing themselves before they become a threat, with implementation of capabilities like security baselines, app protection policies, compliance, proactive remediations, and so on. Now, that's modern endpoint security, but what is the role of zero trust? Now, for modernizing endpoint security that we just talked about, we need a model that doesn't depend on trusted networks or static defenses. We need a model that adapts to context, model that adapts to posture or risk. When users and devices and data is everywhere, we cannot just assume trust. We have to verify it every time. That's why we turn to Zero Trust. It's a model that evaluates each access request based on risk, posture, and trustworthiness, not based on assumptions. Zero Trust is a model built to secure everything, everywhere. In the Zero Trust model, the endpoint becomes the new perimeter. And Microsoft Intune, combined with Defender for Endpoint and Entra Conditional Access, gives us the tools to enforce this Zero Trust model. Now, let's look at Intune from a security perspective. With Intune, you manage corporate and BYOD devices through policies. This includes security policies and application and device-specific policies. The devices are evaluated for compliance with these policies, and using intra-conditional access features, access on such devices to corporate apps is controlled. As you move towards a zero trust environment, aligning your organization's resources with three core principles of zero trust is crucial. The three core principles are verify explicitly, use least privilege access, and assume breach. Intune helps configure and deploy many of the necessary controls to support this zero trust security framework. Additionally, Intune integrates with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint or other mobile threat defense partners to help protect your managed devices, personal devices, and applications to ensure a robust security posture. And Intune gives us layered security control, right from the hardware level all the way up to the user session. This is a glance into the security controls in Intune. All these come together to provide a full suite of security solution and help harden your organization's security posture. We start with a configuration of, say, Windows built-in capabilities, such as BitLocker, disk encryption, and firewall, as well as other settings such as endpoint privilege management, local admin password solution, Windows Hello for Business, security baselines, all the way up to integrating Intune with Defender to enhance threat management capabilities by leveraging several of Defender for Endpoint controls, as well as additionally the compliance policies and conditional access policies. So let's dive into these in upcoming slides. And I'm going to start with disk encryption. This protects data at rest using built-in encryption methods, BitLocker for Windows and FileVault for macOS. And with Intune, you can configure policies to automatically encrypt devices. Firewall, you can configure Windows or macOS devices built-in firewall settings to protect network integrity and block malicious traffic. Then we have endpoint privilege management, or EPM. With EPM, you can implement least privilege by limiting administrative rights on endpoints. EPM allows users to run as standard users while still completing tasks that require elevated privileges. And examples include installing applications or updating device drivers. You can reduce local admin rights and allow time-limited elevation for approved tasks without opening the door for lateral movement for the bad actors. Account protection, now this one safeguards user identities by enforcing MFA, password policies, settings for like Windows Hello, and credential guard. You can configure Windows local admin password solution, that is LAPS, to manage the password of a single local admin account per device. And then lastly, on this slide, we have security baselines. These are Microsoft recommended security configs that provide a default restrictive security posture to ensure that devices meet minimum security standards. You leverage baselines to harden your devices. Let's now head over to the next slide to learn about these other security capabilities and specifically the ones around Defender for Endpoint. Now, Defender for Endpoint is a mobile threat defense solution that offers advanced threat analytics and automated investigation to manage vulnerabilities, prevent security breaches, and also limit their impact. To leverage these capabilities, we can integrate it with Intune and improve the ability to identify and respond to risks, thus enforcing a zero trust approach. Now, Intune on its own cannot or does not detect threats like malware or behavioral anomalies. But when we integrate it with Defender for Endpoint, we take it a step further. With Defender Risk Score, security recommendations from Defender, we can identify risks and we can fix or remediate risky devices with Defender's threat and vulnerability management capabilities. And we can do manual or automated responses from Defender for Endpoint. And once integrated, we enhance security and threat protection to near real time by understanding behavior, context, and compromise. And we can enforce access decisions dynamically, which is again much in alignment with zero trust principles. The endpoint detection and response blade in Intune is where we onboard devices to Defender for Endpoint to utilize threat data from those devices. And these EDR capabilities of MDE, MDE meaning Defender for Endpoint, these capabilities provide advanced attack detections that are almost near real time, as well as actionable. Security analysts can understand scope of a breach. They can take actions to remediate threats. Intune also allows admins to set up attack surface reduction rules. MDE includes capabilities to help ASR, that is, the attack surfaces or areas where your organization is vulnerable to attacks. Admins create ASR rules to block executables or scripts used in, for instance, Office applications or Adobe PDFs, for instance, that attempt to download or run suspicious or malicious scripts. And that's just one example. But you can also block unauthorized removable media, and you can do much more with ASR. And lastly, with Intune, you can also deploy Defender antivirus settings. Defender antivirus is the next generation protection component of MDE. And with Intune, you can configure Defender to protect endpoints from malware, viruses, and malicious software. In short, integrating Intune with MDE provides enhanced security capabilities, as well as helps implement device-centric zero trust with continuous posture management abilities that we looked at earlier. And the combined power of Defender for Endpoint, compliance policies, conditional access policies, that is what enables us to enforce device-specific zero trust. So let's understand compliance and conditional access. Compliance is about device posture. Compliance policies are rules or checks. They define the settings that devices must meet to be compliant. Examples include Windows devices should be, say, at a minimum OS level in order to be compliant, or in case of mobile phones, the phones should not be jailbroken in order to be compliant. And these are just a couple examples. And you can also act on non-compliance, meaning you can take action on devices that are non-compliant to correct the non-compliance. For risky non-compliant devices, MDE can automatically initiate remediation actions based on predefined rules. Say you can quarantine malware, you can terminate suspicious processes, and so on. And then we talk about conditional access. Conditional access is about enforcing that compliance. If a device is compliant, then we grant access to the resource on that device. And that is done by conditional access policies. Also, conditional access combines signals such as user, device, location, trusted IPs, specific device platforms, to grant or deny or challenge access. Conditional access policies at their simplest form are if-then statements. For example, if a device accessing company resources is compliant based on the compliance policies that we set and the MDE risk level detection, if the device is compliant, then we grant access using conditional access. So compliance and conditional access policies in Intune, they work closely with MDE, which is again, Defender for Endpoint, to enhance device security by adaptive risk-based access control, basically by blocking non-compliant devices and by granting access to compliant devices. Together, that way they enforce zero trust by ensuring that only healthy, policy compliant endpoints can access resources with Defender for Endpoint in near real time almost. So conditional access, if you can figure out, is what is at the heart of a zero trust strategy, enabling continuous verification, continuous enforcement that we talked about earlier. And with that, let's learn more about what zero trust is. Zero trust is a security strategy. It's an approach, architecture, strategy in designing and implementing a set of security principles. The three key principles are verify explicitly, use least privilege, and assume compromise or assume breach. Verify explicitly means always authenticate and authorize using all available data points, validate that the object attempting to access the resource is who they say they are. We want to ensure it's no imposter pretending to be a user. Use least privilege access means restrict user or restrict user access with just-in-time and just enough access. Implement adaptive risk-based policies and data protection. The approach provides only the required privileges, only when they are needed. So it limits impact of a given compromise. Then as part of implementing the third one, assume breach, we reduce blast radius by segmenting access. We ensure end-to-end encryption. We leverage analytics for visibility, threat detection, and enhanced defenses. It's the idea that you're going to have a security control that will fail, or you will have a user that will click on a phishing link, but you don't want that to limit your security approach. You assume those possibilities and have measures in place already for mitigation. That's assume breach. And rather than assuming that everything behind the firewall is secure, zero trust operates on the assumption of a breach. So it's as if it, it verifies each request as if it came from an untrusted network, no matter where the request originates or which resource it seeks access to. So zero trust enforces or reinforces never trust, always verify. Now, how is zero trust implemented? We implement it by deploying zero trust principles across the IT infrastructure. It's an end-to-end strategy. We deploy zero trust across identities, endpoints, data, applications, infrastructure, network. These are the areas that generate signals which are orchestrated, and eventually it improves your visibility into the environment. You can get rich data for making trust decisions to grant or deny access to corporate resources. So although zero trust is essentially deployed across the IT infrastructure, since our focus is more on device-specific zero trust, we can start looking at how that is achieved in the upcoming slides here. So in a zero trust approach, security policies are applied regardless of whether the device is corporate owned or personal owned or BYOD, whether the device is fully managed or we just manage apps and data. And policies apply to all endpoints, whether, from wherever they are connected, be it a secure corporate network, home or public internet. But this particular image, if you look at it, it actually shows you or gives you a good mapping of the exact implementation based on the principles of zero trust for devices. And if you look towards the bottom of the image, you can identify the exact controls that we need. For implementing verify explicitly, that particular principle of zero trust, we deploy conditional access and compliance policies. For implementing the principle of least privilege access, we enforce controls like LAPS, RBAC, or endpoint privilege management. And for implementing the principle of assume breach, we deploy configuration profiles, security baselines, and we integrate MDE and defender signals. These are very explicit controls that you can implement that directly align with the zero trust principles. However, there are many more. So here, now, if we look at how you actually implement zero trust for devices with Intune, now, when implementing the zero trust framework for securing endpoints, we focus on some deployment objectives. And these are the controls and configs that support zero trust principles. So we have registration and enrollment of devices to ensure we have visibility into all devices. We have configuration profiles, which help harden the devices, and specifically with things like Hello for Business, which helps to replace traditional passwords. We do device auto updates and patching to keep devices up to date and reduce vulnerabilities. And then we have app protection policies that ensure that the data remains safe or contained in a managed app, that is protecting corporate data at the application level. And then the last few here we've already discussed, so I won't spend time on that, but let's get into the interesting part. Here are some examples of threat management scenarios that we'll review here. When we stitch everything that we talked about together, Intune, Defender for endpoint integration, Defender capabilities, compliance, conditional access, app protection, and much more, we can identify risky devices in near real time and block access to corporate resources on such devices. So in this first scenario, it's a mobile device enrolled in Intune, has Defender capabilities, has compliance, conditional access policies set. If we assume that this device is infected by malware, now Defender is constantly or continuously monitoring the device. So it notices the malware, it raises an alert. And when we have compliance and conditional access policies set, then as soon as the user tries to access Outlook, for example, on this device, their access is blocked. Basically, the moment the device is considered risky, access is tightened automatically. And that's zero trust enforcement in action. And here, if you notice, because it's a corporate device, conditional access policies come into play. But as soon as the user remediates or removes the malware, access is restored. So that's what we want operationally, tighten access during a risk, but then return productivity once the device is healthy. And again, if you look, conditional access is at the heart of the process here. The other example is of a BYOD device where it's not a corporate device, not fully managed. It has Defender, but this one is governed by application protection policies. So when this device is infected, Defender notices the threat, raises an alert, shares the risk signal with Intune, the portals are flagged. And here, because it's BYOD, app protection policies come into play since we are not fully managing the device. And app protection policies are going to block access for the user on the device. And then once access is restored, app protection policies are going to allow access. So those are some interesting real world examples, but I'm going to wrap up here real quick because we're almost up on time. We learned that modern security with Intune is about moving from reactive techniques to consistent scalable controls across your device estate. And zero trust is the mindset. It's very important that we start adhering zero trust principles. As for call to action or homework, I would encourage you to go explore the Zero Trust workshop because it's an offering from Microsoft, a guided planning tool to help build an end-to-end zero trust roadmap, not just for devices, but across your estate. So go find that out, and I'll put the link in chat here for everyone. But yeah, that's all from me, and it's time to put everything in action. If you have any questions, I can definitely take them offline because we are almost up on time. But thank you everyone for listening.
Awesome. And thank you for that. I pasted that link in the chat for the workshop. So that part is good. So you are
Thank you.
set for there. And if anyone's never seen that website, it's kind of crazy that there's that much stuff in kind of an organized bite-sized chunks for each thing, from conditional access to SSO, SAML to Defender settings to Office 365 settings. So really, really good stuff. All right. So everyone, we'll see y'all in a little bit. Later, Gators.
All right. Thank you all.